Hello guys, welcome to Teach Together Try. Today we are looking at the Cartesian plane. Our learning intention is, what is the Cartesian plane? What are the different parts of the Cartesian plane? And our success criteria is going to be this, that we understand its purpose. What is the purpose of the Cartesian plane? That we can identify the x and the y axis on the Cartesian plane, and we can identify the four quadrants of the Cartesian plane. Okay, let's go. Hey, welcome back. Look, I know that you've done coordinates before, and I know you might have done coordinates like this, because I made a video about this, and I know you can probably, if you're in year 6 anyway, probably in year 5 you'll remember, and you can see I've just drawn a star there. You might remember that the coordinates of that star are something like, in fact exactly like, C2. And that star is at coordinates C2 because, well, on the x-axis here, this star is at coordinate C, isn't it? And on the y-axis here, the up and down axis, we can say that that star is at coordinate 2. So I hope that makes sense. It's at C, because it's at C here, and it's at 2 here. And we probably did that in year 5, finding coordinates. Hey, and I'm just aware I'm using the language you might remember, things like the word axis, and axis means we're talking about either the x-axis or the y-axis, and the x-axis is the sideways axis. It's the one that goes this way along the bottom, sideways, side to side, and the y-axis is the one that goes up and down here, up and down, okay? So we've got axis, that's what I mean when I say the x-axis, it's this one that goes side to side, I just drew it purple, and the y-axis is the one that goes up and down. So all the numbers belong to the y-axis in this picture, and all the letters belong to the x-axis. And I think you've looked at that in year 5. And I think you probably remember it, and I think you probably remember the x-axis goes first. So the location of the smiley face would probably be D, because that's the x-axis down here, isn't it? Remember? The x-axis first, the one that goes side to side, and the smiley face is going to be at D, well, 3, isn't it? Because that's the y-axis. So we always do the x-axis first, and then we do that one first, don't we? And then we do the y-axis second, and that's why we've got D, because it's at D, and we did that first, didn't we? The D, and then that's at 3 there, and the 3 there. Okay, now that was year 5 work. Hey, welcome to year 6, because we're about to expand this graph. We're about to expand our coordinates, and they're about to start to involve negative numbers. We're going to have a line going out this way, and the line's going to continue down here, and it's going to allow us to get involved in more complex mapping. So welcome to year 6. Let's have a look at what is called the Cartesian plane. Hey, and here it is. It's just like the old one. Remember, the old one was just like this. The old one had this one, didn't it? Okay. But we've actually introduced 3 new quadrants. We've got the good old first quadrant here, 1. We've got quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, and it's going to go, the way I remember is it goes counterclockwise, like a clock that's going the wrong way. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so welcome to the Cartesian plane. And you might be going, hey, why do we use the Cartesian plane? I like the old one, Mr. Burns. It was nice and simple. There was usually just a line there and a line there, and perhaps these were letters as well, A, B, C, D. Why are we using the Cartesian plane? I don't like it. It looks big. Well, guys, the reality is, as we get a bit older, we start doing more complex maths. And so the Cartesian plane allows us to plot more complex coordinate points. And it also allows us to use negative numbers, because often in mathematics, we're using numbers like -3 and -4, and the Cartesian plane allows for that. So let's have a look at the parts of the Cartesian plane. Well, look, here's a really obvious part, the x-axis, and we wrote that down before, didn't I? X-axis. I showed you that on the other page, and it's still what we call the horizontal axis, the side to side. That hasn't changed, but you will note that, look, instead of just going, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on forever here, we actually now have negative numbers, don't we? We've got -1, -2, -3, -4. And guys, you need to deal with that. Negative numbers are a real thing. We use them in maths all the time, and in real life all the time. For example, when it's really cold, we say it's below 0. So if it's really cold, it might be negative 4 degrees or negative 4 degrees Celsius. So we use negative numbers in mathematics quite a bit. Hey, so that's the x-axis. Let's look at the y-axis. And just like before, it hasn't changed since year 5, the y-axis. The y-axis is the up and down one, and I guess we would call that the vertical axis. The other one, the x-axis, was horizontal, isn't it? Horizontal, right? That was the x-axis. But the y-axis is what we would call vertical, which means that is up and down. It's up and down. And just like the x-axis, remember, look, the y-axis, it's still got all our good old numbers. There's 6, there's 5, there's 4, there's 3, there's 2, there's 1, there's 0. 0 we call the point of origin. But below, it actually goes to -1, doesn't it? Then -2, then -3, -4, -5. Okay, so the y-axis goes into negative as well. And again, we use negative numbers all the time in maths. You can have negative money if you owe too much money. You actually owe people money, so you've got negative money. You can be very cold. You can be below 0, so you're like negative 10 degrees and things like that. So negative numbers are a reality of life. When you get out into the galaxy, there are tremendously cold temperatures. There's like negative 1,000 degrees Celsius and things like that, and that's really cold. Okay, so negative numbers are real. We're using them. Let's have a look at the quadrants. Hey, we've talked about the x-axis. We've talked about the y-axis. I want to talk about the quadrants now, and here we go. Hey, this is quadrant number 1. Right, so if we're talking about the Cartesian plane, we call that quadrant number 1. We call this one quadrant number 2. We call this one quadrant number 3. We call this one quadrant number 4. And it's just like a clock going back to front, isn't it? Going anti-clockwise, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. I feel like I did that on the other page. I did. And I guess the quadrants that we used to operate in year 5, we were operating in quadrant 1. Okay. And that was all just positive numbers. Well, now we've been asked to operate in quadrant 2, which of course involves negative numbers. We're asked to operate in quadrant 3, which of course involves negative numbers as well. And we're asked to operate in quadrant 4, which of course involves negative numbers too. So math just got bigger, guys. Welcome to the big wide world of maths. We're setting you up for high school here. And I think that's the end of our lesson. We've looked at the x-axis, which is of course this axis. We've looked at the y-axis, which is of course this axis. And we've looked at quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I hope that you can label them if you have an assessment just like that. Okay, thanks for watching. There's another video coming that's going to show us how we actually plot and recognize coordinates in the Cartesian plane. Okay, see you later.